And he said he thought CVS to BVS was the essence of leadership. It was the value-added role of leadership, which was coming from one of the great business leaders of all time.
Hewi, how are you?
Very well, Morry.
Episode 6.
Very, very good. The first 5 episodes we've done have been about theory, as we talk about Train.Brain.Daily. And now the next 5 episodes will be about application, very, very specific ways that you can do the sorts of things we've talked about. And today we'll be doing some specific software for the brain.
Great. Probably my all-time favourite is that CVS to BVS.
Well, you're not the only one. That was Jack Welch's favourite of General Electric. In fact, he changed the whole company with CVS to BVS.
Yeah.
And he once wrote a note, one of his famous notes. He used to write these little handwritten notes to people. And he said that we were a friend of the company, which was a rather nice compliment from the chairman.
Yep.
And he said he thought CVS to BVS was the essence of leadership. It was the value-added role of leadership, which was coming from one of the great business leaders of all time. That sums it up pretty well.
Absolutely. And in terms of a company that had to have a CVS to BVS as part of its core, I mean, General Electric has to be, because they made everything from air conditioners to elevators to jet engines.
And to nuclear weapons and pop-up toasters.
Yeah. Don't get those confused.
It had been at the time when I got involved with them in the early 80s, maybe 84 or something. They had made everything, as you've just described, from light bulbs to locomotives, and a 100-year-old manufacturing company, about a $35 to $40 billion operation a year at that time. And when he left it, he had multiplied it to over $400 billion, so his shareholders were happy. But by then they were also a bank.
Yep.
And they were a broadcasting company.
Yep.
And a range of other things. And he'd also let go some of the divisions he'd had. So he really didn't just get in there and talk the talk. He absolutely changed it. The other thing he did as well, he trained a very large number of future Fortune 500 CEOs that went through the Jack Welch, GE experience.
Yep.
Trained at their own training academy at Crotonville-on-Hudson, just near West Point. There was a famous Harvard Business Review article about the genealogy of companies who were CEOs of Fortune 500 companies at the time, had worked for Jack Welch and been trained by him. So an extraordinary client he was at the time.
Wow. Impressive. Outside of that, you're reminding me of, as you said, about a bank, General Electric being a bank as well, reminds me of Ford Motor Car Company. I'm not sure if they took a leaf out of GE or Jack. Maybe they read one of Jack Welch's many books. I do recall,
or even one of mine.
Oh, one of yours even. Well, let's hope it was from the horse's mouth. Yeah. And I do recall at one time during their worst period of car sales, their finance department, essentially the bank,
right,
that you use because you can't pay off the whole car in one hit. You go through Ford Finance, was the most profitable section. And I believe from memory it came from the Japanese division of Ford or something. It was a really outside, and it saved the company.
Yeah, it did. I don't know about its provenance, and it could well have been the Japanese, but it was certainly true that the Ford finance system, was the big profit builder, and the other car companies followed suit as well. Then it was the whole leasing phenomenon and all that sort of thing, which was tax deductible in America. So yes, also Jack passed it on. He was a good wombat. He passed on the X10 program to Larry Page of Google.
Yes,
and Google put it right through Google, and he said there's a famous cover story in Wired magazine where he says, "I live by the gospel of X10." And it goes on to say how they, everything in the company they use about X10, not 10%, and that sort of thing.
That's right.
So it's not just a theory, which is what we have talked about in the last few lessons, but now we're going to get stuck into it, and I'll give you the software today to the listeners, and they can try it out for themselves.
Great. And just for the listeners who have never come across CVS2BVS, it may come across as a kind of a language, Latin almost. It's actually an acronym, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is the software, and I'll give it now. So the first law of thinking is that the current view of the situation can never be equal to the better view of the situation. So you just sort of say that, if you're listening over in your mind now, because we're actually programming the software into your brain at this moment. So you see if you can get your head around that, if it makes sense to you as a sort of an axiom that you can sort of go along with. The current view of the situation is perfectly valid because, after all, that is the way you see your brain sees the situation. But it obviously can never be equal to a much better way of seeing the situation. So to put that into the acronym that you mentioned, the current view of the situation is the CVS. And there's never any shortage of those because the main purpose of the brain at any particular moment, such as now, is to give you a CVS. It literally, as an organ of the body, secretes CVSs all day long, one after another. If it didn't do that, it wouldn't be much use to us. So the main way we can live, what sort of a situation am I in now, how do I cross the road, what do I need to remember, all the sorts of things we do without, in a sense, without being conscious of them during the day, is our brain secreting its view of the situation, its current view of the situation. As we've talked in previous podcast lessons, every brain is obviously different because it's obviously had a different history. So right after conception, as the cells start to split, a little bit later on the brain starts to form, it's already beginning to be wired up. A lot has to do with the circumstances of your mother. Is she in a stressful scenario? Is she in a happy scenario? This is an extreme, but a baby in a womb in Gaza would be rather different than a baby in a womb in Armidale kind of thing, extreme. But somewhere along the line, everyone is born into the situation that they have. And obviously, if you're lucky enough to be born in the right womb, that's a huge start in life. Then you go on, as an infant and then as a toddler, and all of the experiences go right through your life as a teenager and then right at adult life and so on, right up until now. What you had for breakfast this morning? Are you in a warm environment now? It's Melbourne winter. Are you cold? Is there sound and distractions? Is there a strange smell? All these things affect your thinking. Have you had lunch yet? Or have you not had lunch yet? Completely. And so all of these things go together. Your brain does it all, so we're not aware of this, and it secretes that particular CVS. Now, we have two strategic options once we have a CVS. We can either defend it and keep it intact and stay with it and preserve it against change and make sure that it's, we keep it as solid as we can, or we can escape from it and look for a BVS, which in the first law of thinking, the current view of the situation can never be equal to the BVS, the better view of the situation. So we end up with an acronym because we're converting this into software that we can actually use. So we don't want long paragraphs or long sentences. We want a very, very short. The military, of course, do this. And so we have CVS cannot equal BVS. Current view of the situation cannot equal better view of the situation. So the operating switch, we end up with a switch, literally a perception switch, which is CVS switch to BVS. Black switch to white, or dark, turn on the light, switch to light, and so on. So it's a switch like other switches. It has two positions. The CVS, we're never short of CVSs because the brain is giving us CVSs all day long. So we don't have to say, I need a CVS before I can switch. Sure. We've got one. So the hard part is to remember to use the switch and to remember to say, what I need now is BVS, CVS to BVS. And I'll do a little drill in a minute to program this into the listeners' brains. But that's the thinking. We've talked about these matters in the past, and so now we're ending up with software for your brain. This was the same software we talked about a moment ago that Jack Welch put right through the company and Google and many corporations and governments and Victorian state government, right through the Department of Agriculture recently, and so on and so on. It's been well used around the world. And it's something that AI can't yet do. AI doesn't use perception. No. Which is in our brains driven by neurotransmitters. You get a little shot of dopamine and then the world appears this way. or you get a shot of adrenaline, and we might have a bit of road rage or something. So this is going on 1,000 times a day. This doesn't happen yet with AI yet, I say, because who knows what's going to happen.
No.
But so this is a uniquely thing that humans can do. They have perception, and you can switch perception. And I may have mentioned some examples before in the army. You were taught to see into the jungle during the Vietnam era, not at the jungle like the forest for the trees. How you could learn to see at night better than you otherwise could, learn to broaden your perception. And these were military skills that could be trained.
Yep.
A carpenter walks into this studio and notices everything about the carpentering and the wood. A dentist notices your teeth. Just acquired a new dental client in Tasmania recently. A top guy. And so we all have our own trained perceptual habits based on what we do and where we've come from and so on. Now, these are all fine. The main software we talked about before that we got via the church and into our education system was the right-wrong software. So if you've got certainly a Western brain that's embedded this right-wrong software, and you have a CVS, then you can't help thinking that, well, my CVS is the right one, and yours is the wrong one, and so that sets us up for a conflict, argument, debate, or like our parliamentary system or our legal system, and so on. But an alternative, if we now use CVS to BVS, is my CVS is valid, but I can, if I now look for it and think about it, use search, AI, anything, or your partner or your kids or your wife or your enemy or your customers, and find I can now search for a BVS if only I sort of remember or think to do so. So CVS to BVS is a perceptual switch from whatever your point of view is at the moment, but instead of defending it and being stuck, you can escape from it by looking for a BVS. We'll do more in a minute about that.
So a couple of words that come to mind as you describe the CVS to BVS and escape and that right-wrong. So first one is mindfulness. So like a good computer program, if I don't press run, that program doesn't run. So would it be fair to say that mindfulness, whether forced because you've stuck a Post-it note on the back of the dunny door that says CVS to BVS, and it reminds you while you're sitting there contemplating what's about to happen. How does mindfulness play a role in CVS to BVS?
Well, mindfulness is a word, not a technique, although when you unpack mindfulness, various cultures and people that have mindfulness techniques. But mindfulness is a word we can use to describe when you're sort of doing CVS to BVS. So when you're deliberately, in cognitive science, we call it metacognition, same thing, thinking about thinking.
Yes.
So it's moving up to the strategic. What am I thinking now? Why is my brain thinking this way? Could there be a better way of thinking about this? And what can I do about it? Now, that's all embedded in the CVS to BVS algorithm. So we're ending up with an algorithm, a software for the brain, and in order to be able to use it, it does have to be programmed in. Now, there are various ways of doing it. The military way, which is a good one, because the bottom line is so severe in the military, they have to have developed a very, very good techniques over thousands of years, is practice, repetition, and rehearsal. So in a minute, we can talk a bit more, but in a minute I'll do a drill that will help the leader and the listener, program, install this algorithm, this software into their brain, which will do what you've just said, increase the likelihood that you'll be mindful about it, that you'll think about it, you'll remember to actually do it. Because
I, as you know, in fact, we met because of China.
Yes.
And one of the stories that I would talk about is, I was training negotiation and sales skills.
Right, that's right.
And one of the comebacks or one of the responses from the students often would be, yes, I know. Yes. And I would reply with, a lot of people who are driving cars on the streets here in Shanghai know the road rules. Are they applying the road rules?
Exactly.
And then they all go, oh, yes, I understand what you're saying now. So that I guess that's the key. If you don't press run, if you don't apply, there's a comedian. Sorry, there's a comedian called Des Bishop. He's an Irish American. I think he's possibly more Irish than American, but because I think a lot of Americans say they're Irish Americans, but from 20 generations ago, but an Irish-American comedian, and he just makes a point, and it's part of a joke. I won't tell the joke, but it's about how his generation, my generation, I'm an X, and certainly your generation for sure, we didn't have mobile phones. So when we were on the school bus on our way to school, we would watch a drop of rain or precipitation run down the window for the next 15 minutes, and whether it would join up with another droplet.
Yes, right.
And that forced mindfulness, because we would look at it, but our mind would go blank, almost like a yoga type of thing. Whereas kids these days, they're on the mobile phone. If they've got a moment to be mindful, if they've got a moment to press play for CVS BVS, oh, there's Candy Crush. There's a new Instagram feed.
You can be, I won't say mindful because I'm not exactly sure what is meant by it, but I've got a rough idea. It's a bit like saying creativity. Creativity is a description of something after the fact. We say, oh, that's creative.
Okay.
But it doesn't tell you how to do it.
No, sure,
Whereas
that's right.
Lateral thinking tells you how to do what later we'll call creative.
Yeah.
And I think the CVS to BVS is something that you can do what later you might call mindfulness.
Yeah.
Or probably you won't call it metacognition because that's too technical, and mindfulness is perhaps a more user-friendly word. But it does come back down to practice, and we will practice it in a minute. But you can also be mindful with mobile phones. I mean, a lot aren't.
No.
I mean, AI, a lot of people are just treating AI like it was a search engine. It can do one hell of a lot more than that. But you've got to be mindful, cognitive, strategic enough to know how to, prompt is the word, of course, but ask it, tell it what to design, what to do, and then have a conversation until you get something 10 times better than what you had.
Yes, right.
If you just say, cut and paste the essay that the teacher gave it to you and just put it in and say, do my essay, that's pretty low-level stuff. So we are, in a sense, talking like a building. You're thinking, a metaphor can be like a building. There's the ground floor, which is sort of most of us are doing most of the time pretty ordinary stuff, the right stuff, driving on the right side of the road, eating, with the right table manners and ordering the right food and all that, whatever we may think right is, and that can vary. But we can move up the ladder a bit, and we can say that's fine for getting through the day. But what if I need a more profitable business? What if I want my relationship to run better? What if I want to have a better relationship with my kids or my customers or my enemy? We have to move up to the penthouse and start using, dopamine and neurotransmitters, which we may not know how they work, but that is how it happens. Yep. But we can use something like this software that I'm giving you, this CVS to BVS. So shall we give the listeners a chance to program it in? The way we usually do it, and you can do this if you wish, we suggest that you repeat, because repetition is the most powerful magic in the human brain. We suggest that you repeat the acronym CVS to BVS. So if you're listening now, just say that. Don't be embarrassed. Just say CVS to BVS. Say that. I once had an audience in Monte Carlo of an IBM conference of 150 of their executive clients from around the world. It was pretty much like the United Nations, and having them all go CVS to BVS. But it's a bit awkward at first, but you can get over it. Yep. But so you say it now 10 times along with me, and you'll already be programming this in your brain for life. So we'll go CVS to BVS, CVS to BVS, CVS to BVS, CVS to BVS. It can be fun. CVS to BVS, CVS to BVS, CVS to BVS, CVS to BVS, CVS to BVS. One more now.
CVS to BVS.
If anyone's listening in, they'll probably think you're at an Amway meeting or something like that. But this is very, very deliberate neuroscience, because we know the brain is a patterning system, and a pattern is anything that's repeated more often than randomness. So if the way you can cognize patterns in your brain is by using repetition. There are other methods, but repetition anyone can do.
Sure.
You don't need permission, you don't need money, you don't need a battery, you can just do it through an act of will.
Yep.
And once you have cognized the pattern, then you can recognize it.
That's right.
And therefore use it. And just like your Shanghai driving example, you have to go from knowledge which you need first, to skill. Now, the last 5 episodes, we've been doing knowledge. The next 5, we're going to be doing skill, and that does involve practice, repetition. So, and the easy thing is just do your own experiment. Try it out for yourself today. If you've got a situation that arises, and you will just deal with it, and you'll notice, if you do notice, your brain just dealing with it in its normal way, and then you can intervene and say, wait a minute, CVS to BVS.
Yep.
What if there's a better way of doing this? If only I could see it.
Yep.
That will then give you a little dopamine hit, because one of the strongest dopamine hits in the brain is anticipation. So when you say, ooh, there could be a BVS here. Now, I didn't mention yet that we introduced measurement into this algorithm, and that the difference between a CVS arrangement of information and a BVS arrangement of invitation is a quantum leap, an order of magnitude, or a power of 10. So we have the second law of X10 thinking, which is the CVS multiplied by 10 equals the BVS. So this gives us something, some measurement, something to hook into, and something to see that we actually are escaping from our CVS, not just sort of nearby saying the same thing, because sometimes it's not necessarily easy to do, but simple. So CVS to BVS, well, what if I could find a CVS 10 times better than the one I now have, which would be a BVS, and then I can shift to that. So I would suggest you practice this 100 times a day, just the reps. What you'd be doing is simply just putting the executive pattern into your brain, and then it's far more likely at any particular moment, a real moment that's important to you, is oh, wait a minute, CVS to BVS. Now, the first few times you might say, oh, this probably won't work, but I'll give it a go.
Sure.
But when it works, and then you shift your perception from something which is not satisfactory or bother, and then to a BVS, and that actually gives you a win. As Larry Page said, he now lives by the gospel of CVS because it actually works, CVS to BVS. So that's the first fundamental software for the brain that we'll be giving you in this Train.Brain.Daily. There will be others in future episodes, CVS to BVS.
Great. Now, the speed of thought, I think, is aligned with the pattern of applying, or the habit, I should say, the habit of applying CVS to BVS and acknowledging to yourself increases the speed of thought. Maybe I'll give you a bit of context. We are sitting here, 2026.
Right.
I doubt anyone listening to this has never had a problem.
Right.
I'm assuming every single person, whether it's passing an exam, dealing with an angry customer, having a life-changing moment, maybe an operation or a death in the family, but everyone is here after essentially being forced into a better view of the situation, in that they've survived.
Right.
At the time that the incident happened, they probably thought the world was coming down on them.
Yes.
COVID was probably a good initiator of that that fear, and I went through that myself. So in fact, I had a bit of a mental breakdown during COVID due to financial challenges and my comedy business suffering immensely due to lockdowns.
A lot of people did. A lot of countries did. Governments.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I kept saying to myself, CVS to BVS, and I came out of it. And I guess the question is, it's not only knowing CVS is never as good as BVS, and that CVS times 10 or X10 it creates another BVS or multiple BVSs. It is also how quickly you can get to the BVS, because outside of the personal development that we've sort of talked about here and the self-awareness, there's also that competitive nature of sales and marketing.
Right.
And so if I can apply my CVS to BVS faster than my competitor, if I can see opportunities within a marketing, for example, I realized that, the online market, obviously we all know it now, but some 15 years ago when YouTube and videos were taking off on mobile phones and laptops, and someone's gone, there's an opportunity here to break into a new market that's not competing against the older terrestrial advertising on TV.
Yes.
We can suddenly make a huge market share leap out of nowhere. And I'm sure a lot of companies were born because of that CVS to BVS.
Yeah. Well, you make the point, speed of thought. Now, A lot of people think speed of thought is how quickly your brain does calculations. Well, forget about that, because now AI does calculations, infinitely faster than humans that used to use calculators. And humans that used to use calculators could do it much, much faster than humans like me who learnt the times tables, although I soon moved to a calculator and now obviously I'm using AI. But speed of thought is not about calculations where you have machines that do that. It's about what you said. It's how long it takes you to escape from your CVS to a BVS.
Yeah.
So in a family, if you had one member of the family that took 10 years to escape from his BVS to move to a BVS, whether it was gay weddings or climate change or which street you want to live in or any one of a range of things, diet, which books to read, just anything at all. And if there was another member of the family that took 1 year to change her CVS from a BVS, which one is the faster thinker?
That's right. Yeah.
That's what speed of thought is. How long does it take you to escape from we can now use the algorithm, I would have said point of view, but now from your CVS and to move to a BVS. And if you're in a competitive situation, whether it's elite sport or business, which has a severe bottom line, survival.
Sure.
In the military, of course, the bottom line is even more severe. So you're taught these things. I was taught as a young officer, what I still remember and still use in business, SMEAC, which is called an appreciation of the situation, which you do it in the middle of battle, where you got to send the machine gun or send one section, do all the sorts of things. So the ability to, in highly emotional and difficult circumstances,
Sure.
and if you haven't drilled it, you won't do it.
No.
And even then, it's still tricky, what to do in the event of an ambush, ejecting from a plane, things that the average person will never have to do. But as you point out, we do have real problems in life.
Yeah.
And we have real opportunities if we see them and have a plan to take them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we just miss out. So speed of thought, to summarize that, is how long does it take you to escape from your CVS to move to a BVS? Now, if you just leave it up to circumstances and natural thinking, that might take a year. It might take 10 years. But if you've used this program and you've got this algorithm, software into your brain, just like any of the software apps that you have on your iPhone, if you want to know when the next tram is coming, you press Tram Tracker.
Yep.
And then you can find out straight away. But you have to know about Tram Tracker, and you have to actually press the button, as you point out.
That's right. Press play.
And so that's the action where you move from theory and knowledge into using skill into action. And so that's what today's episode and the next 4 will be about, how you could use software to move from interesting theory about neuroscience and AI and the brain and all that, but how it actually can make a difference to your day right now, whether you've got facing a problem, a difficult situation, or or potential opportunities.
Yep.
And the world, of course, is changing and producing all sorts of complex situations that we may or may not have to deal with.
And for some people, that's almost too much. They're used to a 9 to 5. They're used to a retirement package.
Yes.
They're used to 2 holidays a year,
Right.
2 family cars, a garage, and it's not necessarily like that anymore.
Or driving their own car.
Driving their own car, exactly.
Self-driving. Oh, yeah. So everyone, no matter who you are, the world is changing. So even people with the latest of everything are finding suddenly that people don't like it anymore or whatever, and so they're going to have to deal with those problems. So it's the human condition, and we have a brain, but are we going to be ground floor thinkers or penthouse thinkers? And the difference can be better software for our brain.
Yes. But I'm going to throw a cultural challenge at you. Here in Australia, we are possibly cursed with
puppy dogs in the background. One of my favourite scientists who does podcast with his daughter, but their video, and he's always got the dog in the background. He's always playing with the dog and cheering it away, and it's lovely.
Oh, that was meant to be very poignant. But here in Australia, potentially we are cursed by a cultural phenomena known as the tall poppy syndrome. Now, my question here is, we can go from, and we should be going from CVS to BVS, but are there people out there that are hindering the growth of others through the tall poppy syndrome by stopping BVS and pushing it back down to CVS?
Well, that's a good point. And several answers. It is a natural tendency of the human brain to and we call it cognitive dissonance, when information arrives at the brain that doesn't fit the pattern or the CVS, and then we push the information away. And that's just a natural tendency. And you're pointing out the fact that there may be a cultural tendency to do. And the answer is it depends on the brain. Say two human brains. One human brain in that situation may be wanting maybe less of a risk taker. It's just its own brain. What it is, it's not right or wrong. It's just it's more sensitive to that kind of input, and so it may actually find itself inhibited in a tall poppy culture. Another human brain, that's all it needed was to rebel and to excel, and so a lot depends on the brain of the individual that arrives at a situation as to what effect that situation has on that brain.
Because I've been listening to a lot of innovation podcasts, and they talk about how Australia gets so far with its incredible level of education, incredible level of technology that's ubiquitous amongst us. So everyone has a mobile phone, everyone pretty much has the NBN or high-speed 5G. There's nothing technologically stopping you from trying something completely different, as opposed to, say, people in, say, poorer Africa or a poorer part of India or even China, for that matter. But here, we hit this glass ceiling where it is, that's risky. No one's done that before. Let's just do what others have done. Let's watch what they do first.
Well, I would only say that only applies to the people who do that. But there are many people who don't do that. I mean, any of these general things about, really just don't apply. The world is always divided at least into two groups, those who do and those who don't. So so certainly there would be people who respond that way, but it's very, very well known that Australia punches way above its belt in science, in sport, not in the market, because we have a very small market compared to, say, America, but in the military, our small, military units were particularly well praised, by other, militaries that may just have a lot of bombs and they drop those.
That's right.
Whereas we don't have the bombs, so we have to have skills.
Yes.
And so it works both ways. It does inhibit for those people who've become inhibited, but it also can provide motivation. I mean, it can provide opportunity. Now, some of that opportunity we figure isn't in Australia, so we go to America, as I did for 15 years and was based in New York or Europe or Africa or other parts. So we do export a lot of talent, Hollywood, wherever, and then at a certain time they often come back again and share their experience. So I think it's certainly a factor or a feature of Australian character, but not a general statement that applies to anywhere near everyone. That's just those who do, those who don't, sort of thing.
Well, we'd like more people out there to do. Yeah, would you say? So
we do get to do a podcast like this in Australia. That's not possible everywhere.
That is right. Well, that probably leads us to that, and you alluded to athletes. How do we get more of our listeners to be cognitive athletes?
Yeah, so this is a little soapbox of mine right now, Morry. I've been working a lot with elite athletes the last few years, and their coaches and managers and sports businesses and so on, Australian Institute of Sport and others. And I often talk about the brain game, because these are elite people. These are, first of all, carefully selected from the crowd. Then they've got coaches. I mean, I asked one of the coaches of the Green Bay Packers, I may have mentioned this in a previous episode, but American football team, how many coaches they had in the coaching squad. He said 30. I said, wow, how many brain coaches do you have? Oh, none. We've got a sports psychologist, excellent, but not enough. And I talk about the brain game, and they all agree without exception. I've never had one sports person or coach who said, no, the brain game's not important, there's no such thing, but not doing anything about it.
Yes.
Now, the same in business. Except the AI companies who spend enormous amount of their budgets in brain training, and particularly training AI. It's all about training. But in corporate 500 companies, Fortune 500 companies and Australian companies and governments and so on, there's a small training budget, and if we're not too busy, we'll have a seminar, or we might have this and might have that, but nothing. And now this doesn't apply to the military, huge training, or the conservatory, huge training, or the trauma centre, huge centre. Wherever you need virtuoso results, high-level results, the only way you can get it with humans is by training.
That's absolutely right. Well, that's probably a good conclusion for this podcast.
It is.
Training. So CVS to BVS on a post-it note in the back of the toilet door.
Yes.
Obviously, listen to this podcast. That helps inspire you to do it.
And you can listen to it 10 times. Now, you won't, but you can.
You can, yes.
There's nothing. No one will rise up to prevent you, and your brain will then. But we've moved from the CVS of the theory in the last 5 episodes, and now to a BVS of the application.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to applying more of the CVS to BVS. And, obviously, I think organically, that process of you teaching the audience listening is going to probably make me have more BVSs myself.
And probably me too.
There we go. Well,
and maybe even the puppy dog. Who knows?
Oh, absolutely. Our dog that shares our room here in South Melbourne has a lovely mat now. By the way, the BVS was, she kept slobbering on the sofa. So I went to the op shop and I got a $10 dog pillow.
You can slobber away.
Yeah, there we go. CVS to BVS involving a dog. And $10. Well, thank you, Hewi, for your time again. This is a fascinating conversation.
Thanks.